Hello everyone, Trophy Wine Hunter. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm reviewing the Chateau Mouton Rothschild 1989. And you'll see that I have no glass in front of me. And that's because I've drunk the whole bottle. I did the review of this wine last night, and then when I went to review the video, I realized that my mic was off. So there was no sound. And viewers and subscribers of my channel know I do this once in a while. This is not strange. And typically what I would do is just do a voiceover, but I decided this time I'm just gonna do a brand new video, and you'll just have to trust me that I did drink the whole bottle. But it is really funny because I remember there was one comment in one of my videos where I did something like this, and the viewer's comment was, well, how can we trust you when you didn't even drink the wine? And my response was, please view my 500 other videos on this channel where I did. But just trust me, I did drink this wine over the last 2 days. So this is going to be a bit of a comparative review. So far on this channel, I've also done deep reviews over the 1995 Mouton Rothschild, the 2004, and the 2005 Mouton Rothschild. So those will be at the end of this video. The 2004 Mouton Rothschild review, that goes through the whole history of Mouton Rothschild, so I'll refer you to that video. That bottle was at its peak when I drank it, and I think I gave it 97 or 98 points. The 2005, when I drank it, was just getting into the plateau window, and I think I rated it 95 points, and I think the 1995, I believe it was just slightly in decline, and I think I rated 92 or 93 points. So I'm going to do a review of this video, of this wine, and then try to formulate some ideas about, over the course of the 4 bottles that I've reviewed, are there some kind of characteristics of Chateau Mouton Rothschild? So let's talk about this vintage first. This vintage, 1989, is 78% Cabernet Sauvignon, 14% Cabernet Franc, and 8% Merlot. It was, the label here, every year Mouton Rothschild has a different artist do this label, the top of the label. And in 1989, it was George Baselitz, who's a German painter. And if you'll see, at that year, 1989 was when they took down the Berlin Wall. So you'll see on the label, it's these 2 upside down rams, the symbols of the Mouton Rothschild. And you'll see some German words on the side. I'm not going to try and pronounce it in German, but it's basically commemorating the fall of the Berlin Wall, and translated English is, over there is now over here. So it's kind of a neat thing in the overturning of the rams, the overturning of society. I think it's a very meaningful label. With the wine, the 1989 vintage now is it's 35 years old. And so it's really getting to the maximum of its peak. And I've had a number of views about 1989 vintage. I thought it was an up-and-coming vintage. The last few I've drunk have been very nice, but I don't think it's got a huge amount of life left. And that's really my opinion of this bottle. I would like to drink more of these bottles just to make sure that that is the right assessment. It could be the bottle itself, but from my perspective, drinking over 2 days, I think it's getting to the twilight of its career, or its peak. When I first opened the bottle, I did not decant, and it was very aromatic with a lot of cedar, oak, plums, a little bit of herbs. And as it wore on during the next hours and into the next day, I think it lost a bit of steam. And so it gained a little bit of acidity. The body on it is medium. The tannins are still very good, but I wouldn't say very strong. I would say medium to medium plus. And there is still some fruit, although it's kind of drying up a little. It's more like dried berries in the dark fruit, and then on the red fruit, a little bit of raspberries and red currants. And then on the aftertaste, chocolatey, like almost a cocoa powder, a dusty tannin, and also some tobacco elements to it, with a little hint of orange peel. over the 4 vintages that I've drunk of Mouton Rothschild, can we kind of assess some things about Mouton? So firstly, I want to start off by saying that these are all historical reviews. All the wines that I have drunk, 89, 95, 04, 05, are fairly mature wines. Maybe 05 is a little bit younger. And so the first point I want to make is that it's very important to have the review, the assessment of the wine at a certain time period in time. And whatever I review that wine, that's really only valid for maybe 3 years. So wines do change, and I did talk about this in some of my other videos. When I rate a wine, why do I rate it, and why, for instance, this wine I think is about 92, 93 points, and then people will say, well, Trophy, the 2004 vintage was not as good a vintage. You rated 97, 98 points. How can you rate a great vintage like 1989, 92 points and 93 points? And I think the reason is that I caught them at different places in their life cycle. With the 2004, I caught it just at its peak, and with the 1999, I'm just catching it on the slight decline. And so that's kind of one of the things that I want to point out, that whenever I do a wine review or whenever you see a wine review, it's really only valid for about 3 years, and then it has to be retasted to get an accurate assessment of the wine, because wines do change over the years. Better wines don't change as much they're not as volatile in, let's say, 10 or 15 years. The second point I want to make about Mouton Rothschild is the Mouton Rothschild of today, in my opinion, is much different than the Mouton Rothschild in the past. So starting with probably the 2010 vintage, and for sure the 2015 vintage, Mouton Rothschild has producing some of the best wines ever. Now, time will tell in terms of in 20 years whether those wines will keep up, but in my opinion, in drinking the newer vintages of Mouton Rothschilds, they have been all spectacular since 2015, and really at a different level than, say, in the 1980 to 2000 period or the 2000 to 2010 period. I think there was more misses in their portfolio of wines compared to 2015. And that could be a number of factors. It could be just the general technology that's got better for all the wineries. I think it's the expense. I think it's their winemaker. I think the upgrading of facilities. All of that plays a part in it. But I believe that they're making some of their best wines today. And it's at this point from 2015 onwards, they're clearly at the same standard level as the other first grows, in my opinion. Which kind of goes back to the question of why was Mouton Rothschild not considered a first growth? There's two theories. One is that they were purchased by the Mouton family right before the 1855 classifications. That could be one theory. The second theory is that they were purchased by the British arm of the family, and there was some bias against them because they weren't French. Because clearly, if you look at the history books, the actual cost, if you're looking at price per barrel, the price per barrel of Mouton was in the same range as all the other first growths, and arguably had a higher price range than Haut-Brion. So who knows why? But if you asked me right now, of the 5 first growth wines, how I would rate them, probably Mouton would come to at the end of my list. And why is that? For me, based on the vintages that I have drunk, my explanation is I believe that if you look at these 4 vintages that I've drunk of Mouton Rothschild, you'll see that their time frame that they stay at a plateau, I think, is shorter than wines like Latour, Margaux, and Lafite, and Haut-Brion. That is, if you look at a typical historical lifeline of a Lafite, they will always have an up, then a plateau, and downwards trend. If you look at the Mouton wines, in my opinion, between 1980 and 2015, or maybe 2010, those wines, the amount of time that they would spend at a plateau would be much smaller than other wineries. And I give you an example because I just reviewed the 2003 Chateau Margaux, which I thought was excellent. That wine, I think, will stay at its plateau, which is now just reaching, for 20 to 25 years. A wine like 1989 Mouton Rothschild, which is an exceptional vintage for Mouton, I think now we're getting to the life cycle where it's getting to the twilight of its career and its plateau. So it spent a time at its plateau. I would say maybe for the first 10 years, it was just going up the plateau and probably starting to really taste exceptional between 2000 and maybe 2010 or 2015. It would be a shorter range, but the point is, I don't think it would stay at that plateau for 20 years. And you can see that now. If they start the plateau at 2000, now it's 2025 and it's already starting to decline. So I don't think that would happen with a great vintage of Chateau Margaux or Lafite and Latour. So that's kind of my explanation of why Mouton is not as loved. I don't think their time frame at the plateau is as long as the other first grows, given the years 1980 and 2010. So that's a long assessment time. Again, that may change if we now change these ranges from 2015 to 2045. Will that change? Probably so, because I think they're making some exceptional wines. Based on my 4 reviews or 4 tastings of 4 different vintages of Mouton, what can we extrapolate from those? One is, I think, on the aroma, you generally get some cedar or some oak aromas, some black fruits, and sometimes some graphite. I see graphite more in Mouton than I would say Latour. I see it more than I would see it in Margaux or even Haut-Brion. So the 2 that I see in terms of the first grows, the most traces of either graphite smell or taste is going to be, for me, Mouton and Lafite. On the palate, I find that their tannins are at least, and I'm talking about, again, the 1980 to 2015 period, not what I would consider current Mouton. I find that their tannins are not the smooth tannins that I get from a Chateau Lafite or some of the right bank wines, not the type of quality tannins, voluptuous tannins that I get from Calon and Opus. They're good tannins, but not to a point where they're, I would say, smooth tannins. They're not rough either, but that's kind of, and I never find their wines overly powerful compared to a wine like Chateau Latour. So I find them always, the tannin level is high, but not like super high, like a wine like Chateau Latour. And I don't, in general, when they age, I find them medium to medium plus. Most of the wines I find about medium acidity. I don't find huge racing acidity on the wines. In fact, I find that is one of the great characteristics of current Mouton 2015 and above. I find their acidity level much more pleasing to my palate. Although this wine itself, 1989, I felt it was a little bit getting to the flabby, low on the acidity side, slightly low. I would say low acidity, but slightly below medium on the acidity level. And that's why I would put this wine, in terms of its life cycle, probably a little bit further along in the process than compared to the 1995, in my opinion. When we go to taste, it's very hard because you have different vintages, but you usually get a lot of dark fruit. I do get that. You get some red fruit. It is generally a good fruit type. Got a lot of fruit in it, got a lot of intensity of flavors. I do find many times a tobacco or herb element to this wine at the end, and I do find some earthiness and some chocolatey notes on this in general. So these are kind of things that I pick up a lot with Mouton, but kind of to me, what distinguishes at least the Moutons that I drink from 1980 to 2015, you always get good oakiness on the aroma, and then you get dark fruit, and you get kind of a medium-bodied wine that's got nice Pauillac type black fruits, and then a good aftertaste. So oak prevalence is, in my mind, one of the things that helps me distinguish Mouton from other wines, other than first growths. If I had to say which wine to me has the most oak presence, and I'm not talking about strong oak, but just oak in the aroma, oak in the taste, to me it's always, I always see that in Mouton. I also see more balance. It's, you know, it's never the top in my level of levels. So in terms of aromas, or it's not, the intensity is not, I would say, super high on these wines. And so it is almost a lighter style of first growth comparatively to a wine like Latour. So I hope this video has been useful. Until next time, happy drinking.